transparency. You have to have honesty.
And we've chosen to use organic ingredients despite the fact that it's made our product more expensive.
And the book is The Righteous Mind, about how we leap to the answer and then backfill all our rationale.
We have to have fairness. We have to talk about what outfitters' needs are, what land management needs are, what the public needs are who don't utilize outfitters.
But when somebody comes from the administration of the current governor and says, I speak for the outdoor recreation industry and I speak for all of Colorado citizens, that's a very different ask.
And he said, over time, the arc of history bends toward justice. And I think we have to believe that. We have to have the confidence that that's true.
Welcome to our second Southern Colorado Ethics Summit. Over the next 2 days, we are going to explore the ethics premium, the competitive advantage of ethics. Welcome to the 2021 Southern Colorado Ethics Summit. I am Tracy Gonzalez-Padron, the director of the Daniels Fund Ethics Initiative Collegiate Program at UCCS College of Business. I know all of you are very eager to learn more about and discuss ethics as a competitive advantage. During this session, to the right of the live streaming, there are two icons. There's a chat. Use that to introduce yourself to everyone else watching this presentation. Or if you're having any technical difficulties, we'll have someone try to answer those questions. As you know, there are always issues with these virtual events. During the presentation by our keynote speaker, you could ask him questions, either about the book that he wrote or what he's talking about, or anything that comes to mind about ethics as a competitive advantage for individuals. In the Q&A, you'll put in the question, and if it's accepted, it'll show up, and then you can vote on which question you think is relevant. Let me introduce the Daniels Fund Ethics Initiative. The Daniels Fund Ethics Initiative at UCCS is a resource for principle-based ethics education. Since 2016, we partnered with Southern Colorado schools to expand this program. We aim to create a collaborative community to champion principle-based ethics throughout Southern Colorado. This event is the result of timeless Teams meetings, emails, and learning about how to produce a virtual event. It was a joint effort by all the schools participating, and I want to thank all of you for making this event happen, especially our Daniels Fund staff, our Assistant Director, Scott Van Ness, student workers Annalise Hopkins and Alex Velarde, and our Student Ethics Ambassador, Delaney Gust. As we explore ethics during this summit, we should consider the ethical principles from the Daniels Fund Ethics Initiative. Please join me in watching a short film that demonstrates Bill Daniels' commitment to principle-based ethics. A welcome by UCCS Chancellor Venkat Reddy, followed by a welcome video from Bo Peretto, Senior Vice President of the Ethics Initiative at the Daniels Fund.
Let me quote from Webster, the two words you're going to hear something about: integrity. Firm adherence to codes or standard of values. Ethics. rules or standards of conduct governing members of a profession, a principle of right or good behavior. And people talk to me about ethics, integrity. I say to them, I give them one word, it's your conscience.
Bill Daniels was a patriotic combat pilot in 2 wars and one of the 20th century's most innovative and successful entrepreneurs. But first, Bill Daniels was a man of the highest ethical standards. The story of his life exemplifies the importance of adhering to absolute ethical principles. In business and in life, he valued honesty, respect, and a fair outcome for everyone involved. Bill based his decisions on what he believed to be right, not most convenient or most profitable. He considered this approach to be the ultimate business advantage, and it earned him legendary respect and loyalty throughout the business world. Building a reputation of integrity was a lifelong pursuit for Bill. In the early 1950s, Bill owned a small insurance agency in Casper, Wyoming. Among his clients was a gentleman whose unfortunate circumstances forced him to submit a claim for $11,000. When Bill requested for payment, he made a shocking discovery. The policy's underwriter had suddenly declared bankruptcy. His customer was now holding a policy worth less than the paper it was printed on. However, Bill felt he had personally represented the benefit to his client, and it was his handshake that sealed the deal. In a move of extraordinary integrity, Bill made arrangements to personally uphold what the policy promised at $500 a month for 22 months. I had a strong conviction that I owed this to my insured who had placed his faith in my services, Bill said. The $500 payment was more than I was making a month, but I managed, through borrowing and juggling of finances, to keep my word. Today, Bill's foundation, the Daniels Fund, honors his personal commitment to principle-based ethics by supporting organizations that promote the importance of ethical decision-making.
I had to take bankruptcy for the basketball team that I owned in the state of Utah. It was the Utah Stars. We're the league champions.
It was December of 1975, and with no money to pay his players and staff, Bill Daniels watched his team leave the court for the last time. The Utah Stars' financial situation off the court stood in stark contrast to their on-court performance. But past glory didn't seem to matter now that the money had run out. Bill was devastated by the reality of the people he let down. Despite the fact that his financial obligations were legally discharged, he was driven by steadfast integrity to someday repay his debts. 5 years later, after rebuilding his financial strength, he returned to Salt Lake City to keep his word. But he didn't just repay the principal. He also included 8% interest per year for every creditor, vendor, season ticket holder, and player at a total cost of more than $750,000. The people of Utah were deeply moved and commemorated Bill's extraordinary gesture by naming him the first inductee to the Utah Sports Legends Hall of Fame. I suffered when the Stars went bankrupt, Bill recounted. I had no legal obligation to do what I did, but it bugged my conscience. And I had to look myself in the mirror every morning and face head-on what happened. Even today, I meet people who say, "Aren't you the guy who paid that money back to those basketball fans in Salt Lake City all those years ago?" In life, as in business, Bill Daniels was widely known as a man whose word was his bond. He had no patience for people who lacked integrity and would reprimand fellow business leaders whose unethical actions diminished trust in the American free enterprise system he loved. Bill's commitment to ethics education led him to collaborate with the University of Denver to incorporate ethics into the business school curriculum. In 1994, the school was named in his honor, the Daniels College of Business. At the dedication, Bill closed his remarks by saying, "The most important legacy anyone can leave is having friends, family, and business associates remember you as an honest person who helped others. I believe if you live your life in this way, you'll leave the world with a clear conscience and a smile on your face.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the 2021 Southern Colorado Ethics Summit. I'm Venkat, Reddy, Chancellor of UCCS. I'm delighted that you're able to join us for these 2 days of invaluable programming. The Daniels Fund Ethics Initiative collegiate program at the UCCS College of Business is one of our standout initiatives. The program instills our young people with a strong ethical compass and helps educators and businesses build a strong ethical foundation for their decision-making and leadership. We are very proud to bring you this year's program with a focus on the competitive advantage of ethics. In this globalized world, none of us work in a vacuum. With information available at our fingertips, individuals are becoming increasingly aware of companies who operate at a high ethical standard, and especially those who do not. A strong sense of ethics isn't just for small business. It's as essential for the success of the individual and business as the very air we breathe. You have a great deal to look forward to in the coming days, including outstanding speakers and panelists. I hope you enjoy a wonderful summit experience. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Peretto with the Daniels Fund, and I want to welcome you to the UCCS Southern Colorado Consortium Summit. The Daniels Fund is a charitable foundation dedicated to making life better for the people of Colorado, New Mexico, Utah, and Wyoming through its grants program, scholarship program, and ethics initiative. I'm particularly excited to see so many students, educators, and business leaders gathering from Southern Colorado to discuss the competitive advantage of ethics. The Daniels Fund's founder, Bill Daniels, believed deeply in the importance of doing business with ethics and integrity, and was a shining example of how that approach can serve us all very well in the long term. The Daniels Fund Ethics Initiative works with a variety of partners with specific audiences. However, all of the programming is grounded in principle-based ethics and helping people to navigate the ethical challenges they are likely to encounter in their lives and careers. We are proud to support UCCS as well as all of you in your efforts in Southern Colorado. Again, thank you for participating and for your dedication to ethics education. I look forward to a terrific program and only wish we could be together to interact and learn from one another.
It is now my pleasure to introduce today's keynote speaker, Corey Ciocchetti, author and associate professor of business ethics and legal studies at the University of Denver. As the author of the book, Inspire Integrity, Chase an Authentic Life, Corey speaks to tens of thousands of individuals each year about authentic success and living an ethical life. Let's hear from Corey on inspiring integrity.
Thank you, Tracy. You said my last name right too. I know you practiced. I appreciate that. Listen, it's good to have everyone here, even though we're virtual. This is great, very organized. And that Bill Daniels video, I've probably seen it 20 times, and just warms my heart every time I see it. And just the character that man operated his business with is something to emulate, I think. I wanted to talk a little bit about kind of the times that we're in right now before we sort of jump into the ethics piece of this. I mean, it's all connected, but I went to law school in North Carolina, and if you've ever been to the South, there's these huge trees. They must be 80 feet tall, these huge pine trees, and they're, I don't know, 4 feet wide, and they're just majestic looking. Well, when I was there, a hurricane came through Durham, North Carolina, just out of nowhere, and that's not supposed to happen very often. But I'm from Colorado, so I had never been through a hurricane before. So I turned on the news, and they were saying things like, fill your bathtub up with water in case you have to drink that for a week, and you might lose all your power. What's your evacuation plan? And at the end of it, he said, don't get hit by a falling tree. And I'm sitting there, I'm going, what? How in the world a falling tree? There's no way. I know these are powerful winds, but there's no way. So I started asking my friends who were from the area about how that happens. And they said, well, these trees, they grow roots, but they grow roots wide and not very deep. And so what happens is it rains for a week and the water inundates the ground, and these roots have nothing to hang on to. And then you combine that with 90-mile-an-hour winds and these huge trees, they just fall. That's how people get hurt. And it got me thinking a lot about what we're going through now and human beings and our roots, right? I mean, we all have roots too as people. And if they aren't deep, then storms like this will knock us out. And if they're deep enough, we'll get knocked around, but never knocked out. And so I want to talk about some roots today with you. And what do I mean by that? I'm going to talk about roots that I think are derived from character and integrity and principle-based ethics, like Bill Daniels talked about. I also think roots come from your family. They come from your brain and your ability to use your brain and be creative. And so it comes from all those things. But let's talk about the deep roots you can grow from ethics today, because I think that will really help us as we move out of this pandemic. And, which leads me to a second point. A lot of my students come up to me and they say, I can't wait for this pandemic to be over so that my life goes back to normal. Everything will be awesome. And the thing about that is maybe it will, maybe it won't. I mean, I think your life will go back to the way it was prior to this, whether that's awesome or not. I mean, this isn't some sort of switch that's going to flip and all of a sudden things are going to be great. I mean, you want to make sure you're in the right place and chasing what matters. So when this is all over, you can kind of thrive. So, with that in mind, if you have a way to take notes, you might want to take notes, whether you're a student or a professional, or, I don't have any slides, so kind of just take notes if this is interesting to you. I was the first person in my family to go to college, and I bet if I saw you and you asked you to raise your hand, I'd see a lot of hands up. And so congratulations, that's really cool. My parents couldn't give me a lot of advice. It was just my mom, and I remember her saying to me, she said, Corey, I can't believe you got into college. I was like, well, thanks, Mom. That's great. She goes, get down there and don't screw it up. She goes, you're our only hope for the family. And she said that to me. So I go down to college and I got into the University of Denver, which was the only school I got into. So literally this place, that was back in the days when everybody got in. It's a lot harder now. So they put us in this room and we're all freshmen. And they said, you can't leave this room until you pick a major. And I'm sitting there going, pick a major, man. I'm just lucky to be here, right? I have no idea. But the registrar was in there and wouldn't let you leave the room until you handed him a piece of paper. You could not leave. And the piece of paper had to have your major. So you're going to have that for the next 4 years. So I'm looking through that list and I'm thinking, well, okay, history or political science. I think those things are interesting. But I had this voice in the back of my head, and tell me if you've ever had this voice. And it kept saying to me, Corey, you don't pick that. I mean, you go to college so that you can become rich. You ever had that voice? I mean, we all have that voice a little bit, right? So I circled business. I circled business major. There's nothing wrong with that. I teach in a business school. That's my job. I mean, business is great. I just didn't love it at the time. So I'm a junior. Fast forward now, I'm a junior in college, and my friends are taking the LSAT test. And I thought, that's it, man. If you could just be a lawyer, you could be rich. And that's what I'm saying to myself, right? I wanted to be a lawyer for the perks, right? You could travel, retire, meet interesting people, have an interesting job. Didn't necessarily want to do the work of a lawyer. So I ended up taking the LSAT. I go to Duke Law School because I wanted to go to basketball games. The reason I picked that is because I wanted to go to basketball games. So when you're thinking about picking a grad school, the basketball team could be on the list, but it probably shouldn't be number one. So anyway, that's why I go. And I graduate 3 years later, $120,000 in debt. And I still don't want to be a lawyer. They haven't convinced me that that's the career that I should take. So I go work at law firms anyway. I go interview with these law firms because what are you going to do? I owe all this money. I owe $120,000 in student loans just from law school. And I sit down in these interviews with these young lawyers and they look like they want to cry. And that's in the interview, right? Like if you can't keep it together for 30 minutes in an interview, man, what's your job really like every day? So I was getting these little sort of signals that these big time law firms maybe weren't the right place for me. I get to this one place and it's 8 a.m. and this woman's talking to me. And this was a really important law firm in Denver, really high powered law firm. And she looks at me and she goes, well, I'm done with the interview. Corey, do you have any questions for me? And that's a great opportunity in an interview to ask good questions, right? Like, what's it like to work here? How's morale? How do you make partner, right? These are good questions. Instead, I looked at her and I said, how much does it pay? Just tell me how much it pays, which you're not supposed to ask. That's like a question don't ask, right? So she looks at me and she's kind of befuddled and she starts going through the math. And she says, well, you'll make $120,000 a year. I mean, I can't remember what it was, but over the time it was like a $200,000 a year job when you add in all the bonuses and stuff. And I'm sitting there going, I mean, when I was your age and students on this call, if I had $500 to my name, I felt rich, right? Now you're telling me I'm going to make all this money. So I looked at her and I said, that's amazing. I'll take it. What a great job. And she goes, Corey, I'm not offering you a job. She goes, what's wrong with you? You just asked me how much it paid. She goes, this is an interview. She goes, listen, I could tell that you're really nervous. All right. So she goes, do you need to go to the bathroom? So I have 2 kids at home. I have a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old at home. And that's a question I ask them every day, every hour on the hour. Like, hey, who needs to go potty, right? We got to go to the store. But I was 25 years old in a job interview and asked if I needed to go potty. So what do you do in that situation, right? Oh, I said, yes, please just get me out of there. So I leave her office. It's certain I won't get this job. And I get to the bathroom. And there's a guy standing there. He's blocking the door. It was an employee, a young lawyer at this law firm, and he won't let me by. So I look at him. He looks at me, and he finally points at my chest, and he goes, I'm waiting for you here at the bathroom. Get in there. And he followed me in there to the bathroom, like right on my heels, like we were going to fight or something. So I go to the sink, and I'm scared. And he gets up, and he puts his arm around me, and he starts to whisper into my ear, which is creepy enough. And there's no reason to whisper because like nobody's in there. Anyway, he's whispering and he goes, your name's Corey, right? And I said, that's right. He goes, you went to Duke Law School. That's you, right? I said, that's right. He goes, well, my name is Scott and I went to law school there too. I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. And he leans in and he whispers and he goes, don't come work here. That's what he said to me. And I looked at him, I said, what? He goes, these people suck, man. You're going to hate these people. And it won't take long till they grow to hate you too. They're going to hate you. And I'm like, they don't even know me. What do you mean? I haven't even started. He goes, don't worry. They hate everybody. He goes, you're going to keep a suitcase behind your door and every family vacation you ever plan is going to get canceled. He goes, they're going to pay you a lot of money, Corey, but that's the trick. And those are important words. And I think you should write those words down. Very, very valuable. But at that point, I totally ignored that. So he goes, take my advice and just run. He said, run. And then he ran out the door and I never saw him again because you don't put that guy on the official interview team, right? He doesn't get to come to lunch with applicants. He's an unhappy camper. So he leaves and I'm staring in the mirror. And what should have been a huge red flag to me, I tried to justify, right? I said, well, he's just jaded. He's just the lone wolf. Every company has someone like Scott. And I just happened to meet him in the bathroom, right? I'm trying to justify this all away. And so they ended up offering me the job a week later, not sure why or how that happened. And I said, yes, of course I did. Because my mind was, where I wanted the prestige of it all. Well, it didn't take long for me to realize that he was right. I mean, he was right. It was miserable there. And I did have a suitcase behind my door and I would sleep in my office chair. I mean, I slept in my office 1 week for an entire week without going home. And they would rent us a hotel room across the street, not to sleep, but just to shower. So we didn't smell for the clients. That takes years off your life. And I have to say this, if any of you on this call are thinking about law school, that's the best decision I ever made. So law school is a wonderful choice. I feel like a smarter person, a more confident person because I just got greedy with my job. There are plenty of jobs you can do as a lawyer that are wonderfully fulfilling. So let me not dissuade you from that, but not the one that I chose. So I kept walking through the halls at 3 a.m. and wondering, why is my boss still here? Why is my boss's boss? Why are these people still here? Like they never go home and they're 60 years, 70 years old. And is that going to be me in 40 years walking the halls of this law firm at 3 a.m? And I said, I'm going to quit. I need to quit. But you can't just do that. I had just gotten married. So picture this conversation from your spouse, okay? You pretend you're my wife. I said, honey, I'm never home. I hate this job. I'm going to quit. Are you cool with that? I just want to make sure you're okay with that. And if you ever got to meet my wife, she's cool. Like she's super nice and supportive and friendly. That's why I married her, right? She's a nice person, but not this night. So I say these things to her and she says back to me on the phone, she goes, Corey, what did you say? You're going to quit this job that your friends would love to have? She goes, I had no intention last month of marrying a quitter. That's what she said to me. And I was like, well, dang it. And if I knew you were going to say that, I would have called my mom. I should have just called my mom and asked my mom if I could quit this. Anyway, I got my wife on the phone. Then she says to me, you can't quit. She goes, what else do you know how to do? She goes, do you have any other skills? And I'm sitting there going, do you love me? Right? What are you being mean? But she's making good points. Her point was, listen, you are underqualified and overpaid, which, by the way, that's the day you graduate from college, but that's your best hope, right? Because you're never going to be overqualified at that point. So she goes, just suck it up and just work at this job for 6 more months. Let's see what happens. And so I agreed. So a year goes by and it's miserable. It's the same. Of course it was. And I said, I'm going to quit. I fulfilled my commitment to her. I went to my office. I wrote up a letter of resignation and I put it in a little envelope. I had never quit a job before. And I'm walking over to this guy's office. My hand is shaking. I'm so scared of quitting, just what he's going to yell at me or something. And so he sees me and he goes, hey, Corey, what's up? What's that in your hand? And I said, well, I'm going to quit, Mark. Here's the letter. And I had a whole speech plan to what I was going to say, but I couldn't say anything. He jumps out of his chair and he goes, give me that letter. And he rips that out of my hands. He goes, nobody quits. Nobody ever leaves. You just shut up and sit down. And he took my letter and he ripped it in half and he threw it into the trash can. He threw it away. And I just realized a few years ago that no one ever read that letter of resignation, except I was the only one that ever read it. I wrote it and I read it and no one else read it. And he threw it away. And I thought that was rude. And so I looked at him and I said, Mark, everybody at this law firm is completely and utterly miserable. Now, as soon as you say that, you're fired. I mean, that's it anyway, right? But he looks me right in the eyes and he goes, I know that. And I'm like, wait, man, I just told you that every single person that works for you hates their job and life. And he's like, yeah. I said, these people are on their 5th marriage here, Mark. And he looks at me and he goes, I know. He goes, you're not listening to me. He goes, I know these people are miserable. What I said to you is they don't quit. Not that they don't want to quit. They all want to quit. Nobody leaves. He goes, there's 2 reasons why. And I said, well, what are they? And he goes, reason number 1, they don't have enough money. They're broke. And I said, how is that possible? These people make $1 million a year. And he says to me, it doesn't matter how much money I pay these people, Corey. They always spend more than I pay them, which should be a bumper sticker for all Americans. They should just mail that out on tax day, right? That's just what we all do, right? We make money, we spend money. And so I just thought if you made $1 million a year, you'd be okay. You'd find a way to make that work. But he went through where all the money went, was gone. So my advice to all the young people on this call, and maybe the older people too, who knows, if you could find a way to live within your means, you will retain the flexibility to quit a job you hate. And that's a powerful piece of advice. That's worth writing down. It's not, you don't want to save your money necessarily so you could retire in 40 years. You're not thinking about that, or because you want to be fiscally responsible. I think that's important, right? But you may not. So how about this though? You get a job and it sucks and you don't like your boss and that person's mean, you can walk away because you have the wherewithal to do that. And these lawyers weren't stupid people. They just never learned that anywhere. He said the second reason quits is pride, which you want to talk about ethics and virtues. He goes, as if they had climbed the ladder of success and they got to the top and they looked down and they realized that their ladder that they've been climbing their whole life was leaning against the wrong wall. And he said, what are they going to do, Corey? Just climb back down, pick it up, move it somewhere else, climb back up. I mean, what are they going to do? It's a really interesting point. It takes a lot of pride, I think, to quit a job like that. Or you'll lose a lot of pride. So I said, Mark, I'm out of here. And I just left. So I get a phone call from the University of Denver. This is a couple months later, just a random phone call. I had no job and no real plan. And this is exactly how the conversation went. And I didn't know this guy who was calling me from Adam. His name was John, but I didn't know him. And this is exactly how the conversation went. He goes, hey, Corey, this is John from the ethics department at the University of Denver. He goes, someone died down here last week. That's all he said to me. And he sits there. And I said, John, oh my gosh, well, nice to meet you. That sounds terrible. A student died. Why are you calling me? I thought he wanted to raise some money, like an alumni campaign or something. He goes, oh, I should have been more clear. It wasn't a student. It was a faculty member who died. And he was 87 years old. And he was here for, 60 years. And he went through this list. And by the way, are your faculty members old? Are your professors old? Tracy and I have a really good job, which means we don't leave till we die, right? It's a good job. Anyway, this guy died in the middle of the term, right? And so he goes, I got to get someone in this classroom because it's the middle of the quarter. He goes, do you want to be a teacher? And again, important words in my life now, but at that point, you might as well ask me to be an astronaut. And I said, no, John, no thanks. I don't want to be a teacher. He goes, please come down here. He goes, there's no one else on my list. So I got a job that no one else applied for. Anyway, he goes, I said, when did he die? Last week? He goes, yeah, last Friday. He goes, just get down here. I said, John, that's bad karma to apply for a guy's job who just died. I said, I'm just making stuff up. I don't know if it's bad karma or not. And he says this to me. He goes, Corey, I don't know about that. He goes, but think about it like this. Bad for him, but good for you. And I'm like, what kind of ethics department is this, man? What do you mean bad for him? Like, it's really bad for him. He's dead. Anyway, you do these things for your alma mater. They ask you to come do something. You say yes. So I go down to this interview and they said to me, Corey, you're going to have to teach ethics. What do you know about ethics? And so I looked at them and I said, I don't know anything about ethics, y'all. I went to law school. I said, it didn't come up. And they said, well, wasn't there an ethics class in law school, Corey? I said, well, yeah, there was. They said, why didn't you take it? I said, I took it. I just didn't learn anything from it. And it's not because I'm a good person necessarily. I just thought it was stupid. And here's why. Here's what they taught me in my legal ethics class, okay? So you do not need to write this down, okay? But here's what they said. Don't have sex with your clients. And I'm like, check, that's great. They said, don't steal your client's money. You'll have access to a bank account with their money in it. I said, that's great. I won't do that. They said, listen, if you call a guilty witness to the witness stand, you got to be really careful in how you ask questions. And I'm sitting there going, can you email me this list? Like, none of this seemed hard. I walked out of that class 17 weeks later, the exact same person I was the day I walked into it. You ever had a class like that? You walk in day one, you walk out 15 weeks later, and you're the same. You're not worse. You're not better. You're the exact same. What a waste. My wife went to medical school. She took an ethics class. It's the same stuff, right? You walk in, it's required. They tell her not to have sex with her patients, which again, like I'm her husband, so I love that rule. What a great rule. I think they should tell everybody that rule. They said, don't commit Medicare fraud, which great. Then they said, don't cut off the wrong leg during surgery. And they go through these ethical, what they called ethical rules. And I'm thinking, this is not working. And so I'm going to say something to you that you may not expect an ethics professor to say, but I don't think an ethics class in and of itself has any value. I think those things by themselves are virtually useless. And if you don't agree with me, then you have to explain to me why so many doctors and lawyers still cheat. Tell me why. How come so many engineers and accountants still cheat? I mean, they have continuing ethics education. The programs are chock full of ethics classes. You tell me why it doesn't work. Let me tell you what else doesn't work, and this probably won't surprise you if you're a student. An honor code at a university. Did you know that 70% of undergraduates admit to cheating sometime between freshman and senior year? I mean, 70% of you students on this call cheat or will cheat, violate the honor code in college. So what good is that? Let's take any law, okay? Let's take a law that says if the light is red, you stop. Does that law work if 70% of people violate it? Like if me and 6 cars behind me just decide to run it one day because we're late, or you go to the airport, right? And then there's a security, area, and you say, you know what, screw this. I'm not going to take my shoes off. I'm not going to take my laptop out. I'm going to put my water in my bag. I'm an outstanding, good American citizen. You get 6 people behind you, and you all just run through the metal detector at the same time. But then 3 people sit back and they do it right. Would you want to get on an airplane with me in that situation? So no law works when it's violated more than it's kept. So if I was starting a university from scratch, the last thing I would do is create an honor code because it's become a joke. At my university, they have to sign the thing as a freshman, right? And then they violate their own signature. And you talk about, Bill Daniels in that video said what integrity is: adherence to a set of principles and a set of values. Well, again, it's when you sign your name to something, like to Bill Daniels, that meant something. And a lot of these students, it doesn't mean anything. Take this to the professionals. If you're sort of a professional on this call, you probably have mission statements and core values at the place where you work, right? Well, so did Enron, and so did Tyco, and so did Global Cross. So I'm not impressed by ethics requirements and things like that. So here's why. I think we've skipped a step as a society, okay? And that's critical. That step is this: every one of you seeing my face right now has to first believe that being a good person matters. I mean, do you believe that? Because if you don't believe that, I'm never going to convince you in this talk. This conference won't mean anything to you. In your ethics class, you'll just it'll be transactional to you. What can I do to get the grade I need to move on to the next thing? If you don't believe that, we're wasting our time. It's only if you believe that deep in your heart that ethics can matter. Now, you're probably wondering, why in the world would this guy teach ethics if he doesn't think it matters? Now, listen, I totally think it matters once you've crossed that hurdle. Why? As a matter of fact, I think these classes can be the most important classes you take. Why? Because I think the world is gray. I mean, I can think of like 5 things in life that are always morally prohibited in almost any culture, right? Child abuse, rape, I don't know, sexual assault. I can think of like 5, 6 things that are always morally wrong. Other than that, it's gray, isn't it? Life is really gray. And in a life that's 99% gray, wouldn't it be nice to have some core values? Wouldn't it be nice to have some ethics training? So again, I think this conference is amazing, but I think that's why Tracy put me first, because we just want to make sure you hop this hurdle. Let's believe in our heart that being a good person matters. Well, what does that mean? Well, I'm going to tell you a story, and this is how I sort of teach ethics now based on this story. It was told to me by a man named John Bogle, and he founded the mutual fund industry in this country. Interesting person. Vanguard Mutual Funds was his thing, and he comes to Denver to talk. And I'm in the front row of this speech, man. I want to hear this guy talk about job market and interest rates and the economy. And he gets up on stage and he says, tonight, I'm going to tell you all a story about a dog, a racing dog. And I looked at the guy next to him like, did he say jobs? Like, I don't want to hear about a dog. What are we doing here? But you can't just leave. I'm sitting in the front row, right? So I'm listening. So glad I stayed. He said, this is Cash, the racing greyhound. And he put a picture up on the screen. He goes, the most famous racing dog of all time has won tens of millions of dollars for his owner. Anyway, the night before the biggest race of his life, the dog and the owner, they're on the patio and they're talking, and she looks at him and says, hey, you ready to run in this race tomorrow? We're going to win. Dog looks back at her and says, I'm not going to run tomorrow. As a matter of fact, I'm going to retire. I'm done. And the owner says, why are you done? Are you hurt? I mean, the race is tomorrow. Are you hurt? Dog says, no. She says, are you mad at me? Dog says, no, you're wonderful. She says, are you too old? And dog says, I could still win. I think I could still beat everybody else. And she goes, well, why are you quitting? You owe me that. Just tell me why you're quitting. And the dog says this, well, I've been thinking about my life lately. And it finally occurred to me that those little white rabbits I've been chasing my entire life, they're not real. So I'm going to quit. And so he says that. And that's really a profound thing now, right? But I didn't care. I'm like, that's cute, whatever. So I didn't get it. So he kept talking. And well, at the end of his speech, he got me with his last words. He said, you can never get enough of what you do not need to truly make you happy. You can never get enough of what you do not need to truly make you happy. He says this, and then he just leaves. He sets the microphone down and he leaves. He's over. The event is over. And everybody else leaves the room, right? I'm just sitting there in the front row with my head in my hands like I'm ready to cry. And here are the questions I was saying to myself. Corey, you have more money than any of your friends. You have a better job than any of your friends. You have a more elite education than any of your friends, a nicer car, a bigger house. I mean, go down that list, right? Everything I had always wanted, and climbing that ladder. And I kept coming back to the same question, man, why aren't you happy? You ever asked yourself that question? I mean, you have tried so hard in your life to get to this place and you finally get close to it. You look up and you're not even happy. And after an hour, I realized something, man, the world had been lying to me. And you may never hear this again. So let me just repeat that. The world's lying to you. So here are some lies. You ever heard this one? If you just had more money, you'd be happier. That's nonsense. I know plenty of rich people who aren't all that happy. Believe me. And the richer you get, you don't get much happier. Have you heard this lie? If I was just better looking, if I was just skinnier or prettier or more handsome or more athletic, those lies literally kill my students. Don't buy into that. Or a lot of you maybe define your worth on your grades. So if I just had better grades, I'd be a happier person. It's not true. I mean, I sort of did the same thing I when I was your age, and it doesn't work like that. You'll never get enough of that stuff to make you happy. Why? Because it can't. You'll just chase more and more of it. So to be very clear, there's nothing wrong with any of those things. I find nothing morally wrong with money or being good looking or good grades. I think they're morally neutral. They're just bad when they define you. And I want you to be really clear with yourself, like right now, what's defining you in your life? Because if it's something like that, you'll never catch it. You'll never catch the rabbit. You'll just chase and chase and chase. So what's worth chasing? If I'm going to sit here and tell you not to chase that, then what are you supposed to chase? And what's cool about teaching ethics is I just get to talk to people. It doesn't matter what you look like on the outside. I'm talking to your inside. And Bill Daniels mentioned this. He goes, it comes down to your conscience, which is beautifully said, right? I just get to talk to you. So I don't care what religion you are or aren't or where you're from. I think human beings want three things. Number one, everybody wants this. Peace and contentment deep in their heart. That's number one. And another way to phrase that is they want to wake up happy. So my question for you is do you wake up happy? Let me ask it in a different way, because there's a magazine in America that used to ask this question to Americans, and they had a really wide circulation. And the question was this: in the morning when you wake up, do you genuinely and consistently wake up happy? Now notice what the question is asking. It's not saying, do you wake up tired? It's not saying, do you sometimes have a bad day or bad week? I wake up tired all the time. I've got 2 little kids. I'm tired every day, right? I have bad weeks all the time, and I have hard weeks all the time. But the question's not asking that. I mean, thank goodness. The question's asking something different. Deep in your heart, genuinely, over long periods of time, consistently, do you wake up happy? That's a different question, right? Because it gets at your baseline. Well, it turns out that every time that gets answered, 75% of Americans answer no. No, I don't. Which is always shocking to me. I shouldn't expect anything different, but it's just shocking. And I keep saying to myself, in this country, how is that possible? Now, I have to add this. Look, I teach constitutional law. Right after I give this speech, I have a class on constitutional law, and it's a hard class to teach these days. You shouldn't envy me for that. My students walk in tears a lot of times. And I have to say this, America will break your heart. Period. There's a lot of scars in this country. But I have to say this, there are billions of people all across this earth who would love to come here and have our bad days. Now listen very carefully to me. Both of those statements can be true at the same time. So what I would say to you is, if you can't find a way to genuinely and consistently wake up happy in this country, you are chasing something fake. And I don't know you. I can't even see you. So I have no idea what that is for you. But you got to find out what that is, and you got to stop it, because you're doing life wrong, right? The analogy I use is Thanksgiving. I love Thanksgiving dinner, right? And my favorite part of the dinner is mashed potatoes. I love it. Well, let's say I called home one year and said, hey, Mom, I'm bringing the family home for Thanksgiving. We'll see you Thursday. How's everyone? Then I would probably say to her, how are the mashed potatoes? I'd tease her. Let's say one year she says to me, I don't have any. They went bad. I can't get any new ones, but we'll see you Thursday. We're not going to have any mashed potatoes, but it'll be good. Would I then say to her, what? No mashed potatoes? I'm not coming. I'm out. I'll go to Chili's. I'm not coming. Who would do that? You'll not go to Thanksgiving dinner because there aren't any mashed potatoes. But if I got there that night and there were some there, I would eat them, many as I could. But you don't go. You go because your family's there, right? And you go because people you love are there, and it's home. So I guess a silly maybe way to answer this question is, are you getting up each day and go into your life for the mashed potatoes? And if that's true, figure out what that is. You got to knock it off. All right, so here's how this happens. This lack of contentment happens because we're too busy. So I went to Paris. My wife and I were on what's called a baby moon, and you're about to have your first kid, and you'll never get to go anywhere fun ever again. So that's what we thought. Now we go to Utah, which is beautiful, right? But it's different from Paris. Let's put it like that. So we're in Paris. We're walking around Paris, and we go to these art museums. So we get to this one place, and there are strict rules. You can't talk, you can't eat, you can't drink, put your phone away. If you talk, they'll come yell at you. So I'm looking at all these different paintings, and there's one there that literally is the ugliest thing I've ever seen. I don't know, I'm not an art person, but it looked like someone put on a blindfold, took every color imaginable, found an ice cream scoop, and just threw colors at this painting until sobered up, I guess. I mean, it was ugly as can be. But everyone's standing around this painting going, it's so beautiful. I can't believe how beautiful. And I couldn't take it anymore. So I looked at my wife and I'm like, that's freaking ugly. And she looks at me and she goes, I know it is. Just shut up. So she's not listening. So I look at this guy on the other side of me. I said, man, that's ugly, don't you think? And he goes, Monsieur, tu parles français, start speaking French. And I don't, my French is terrible. So I'm trying, and people around us are translating. And now you have a group of 5 or 6 people talking. And so that's a commotion in a place like this. And so the guard sees us and starts coming over here. And my wife's like, great, here he comes. And he's going to come over here and he's going to yell at you. She goes, when he gets over here, you just lie to that man. You tell him you like that painting and we'll just run out of here. Just I'm an ethics professor. You're telling me to lie to that man? She's kicking me in the shin you better lie. So he comes over. And in broken English, he goes, excuse me, sir, I see that you're laughing at our painting. He goes, it's very famous. Do you like it? And I'm not going to lie to him. So I looked at him and I said, no, sir, I don't like it. I think it's ugly and it's giving me a headache. And if you really ask me the truth, I think it sucks. I said that. And he leans in and he goes, excuse me, my English isn't very good. Did you just say that painting sucks? He goes, no one's ever said that to me before. And my wife is over here going, well, I wonder why. I'm married to an idiot. Of course, no one's ever said that. Here we go, right? He goes, but since you said that, I'll let you in on a little secret. He goes, did you know that's every color imaginable thrown onto a canvas? And I'm sitting there going, I was right. I mean, how is it possible that I was right? That's crazy. But the broken clock is right twice a day. So he goes, but that's not the point. He goes, the artist wants it to be ugly. He wants it to suck, as you say. He goes, the artist is trying to depict the barrenness of an overly busy life. Uh-oh. That's pretty good, isn't it? And I'm like, no wonder I hate it. That's my life. And I went home and I looked it up. It's a quote from Socrates who said, and this is worth writing down, beware the barrenness of an overly busy life. Beware the barrenness of an overly busy life. And that's just beautifully said. Have you ever been really busy in your life and at the same time super lonely? That's how that works. It's totally how that works, right? But we inundate ourselves with things to do so we can avoid our loneliness, and all it's doing, it's a vicious cycle, and it's making us more lonely. So if you find yourself not waking up happy in the morning, try this. Just quit some stuff. Just find 2 or 3 things that you love. And you want to talk about the principles that Bill Daniels talks about. How about that? There's accountability in that. And there's some honesty in that, isn't there? Just being honest with yourself. And you're accountable to yourself. I'm going to do a few things and I'm going to do them right. That's number 1. Number 2 is, these are the real rabbits worth chasing. Number 1 is peace. Number 2 is a small group of really good friends. Notice I didn't say a big group of crappy ones. And the fact that I have to differentiate those 2 statements is telling of our society, isn't it? We think if I just had more friends, I'd be happier. It's not like that, right? The same thing is true of grades or whatever. When was the last time you got really good grades? How long did that make you happy for? 5 minutes, a week? When was the last time you got a new car or a new outfit or something? You're happy for a second, right? It's called hedonistic adaptation. That's what the psychologists would call it. So we adapt to our circumstances and then we want more and more. Well, what we really need in terms of friends are 3 really good ones. What do I mean by that? 3 people who would rush into your life when everybody else rushes out. Do you have that? Especially for my students, they all think they have that until something goes wrong in their life. And then the second something goes wrong in their life, their friends scatter to the winds. Have you noticed that? And they have nothing. And they thought they had all these friends. Well, it's all superficial, right? It's all social media. It's all text messages. There's no roots. It's not there. So here's a hypothetical for you. If you were getting married tomorrow, do you have 3 people you would absolutely love to be standing next to you at your wedding? Okay, so everybody could go find 3 people, right? Go on Instagram, you could find 3 people to stand next to you at your wedding. That's not what I mean. 3 awesome friends you want with you the rest of your life. Do you have that? And until you have that, man, I would chase that well over looks or grades or money, man. Find that first. Be very wary of this phenomenon. It's a very college and high school phenomenon. I am surrounded, yet friendless. I am surrounded, yet friendless. Be careful. And adults, man, we worry about that too, right? We work in these places and we're friends with nobody here. But you don't need 20. You just need about 3. And the third thing everybody wants is to be good. This is it. You knew this was coming, right? Bill Daniels said conscience, and you knew I would bring that up. That's what you want. What I mean by conscience, it's if I had you in person right now, I would just say, touch your tummy. You might as well just do it. Just touch your tummy. That's where your conscience is. That's what he's talking about. It tells you right from wrong, doesn't it? Or at least it used to. Remember when you were little and the first lie you ever told, how hard that was, and you know how easy it is now? Or when you were mean to somebody when you were little, it felt wrong, and now it's easier. The way I like to think about this is my oldest daughter's name is Sophia, and she's 7. She just turned 7. And if you were to meet her, she's a precious gift from God. I love this girl so much. But my daughter lies. She's just learning how to lie because she's little. Well, when she lies, her whole body moves, right? And so it's obvious that she's lying. So I'll look at her and I'll say, honey, are you lying to daddy? Because that doesn't seem true. And she just looks back at me and she goes, yeah. She just tells me. Like if you ever took a lying class, on day 1 of lying class, here's what you teach someone on day 1 of lying class. If you're lying to somebody and they ask you if you're lying to them, you'd say no, right? But my daughter, she hasn't taken lying class because she's 7. So here's the thing about when I lie, you can't even tell. When my daughter's mean to me, within minutes, she's up hugging my leg. Daddy, I'm sorry. Do you forgive me? When I'm mean to somebody, I just finish the phone call. Click. I just finish the meeting. I just end the Zoom call. I just drive to work. And then I say to myself, well, he deserved it. How many times have we done that? Well, she's a jerk anyway, so she deserved it. That's what my daughter is morally conflicted about that for hours. And for me, it's just part of my day. So when you hear Bill Daniels use the word conscience, I want you to think it's this internal compass that teaches you right from wrong, that you are able as a human being to put on mute. And I want to just caution you to do that not very often. Never put it on mute, because you can mute it so much that it just breaks. See, Bill Daniels' conscience was unmuted, which is why he paid that money back, right? Which is why he paid his debts, which is why that meant so much to him. And there were times in his life, if you knew of Bill Daniels, there were times in his life where he had it muted. When it came to his business career, it was unmuted. You can damage your conscience to the point where it breaks. and you see people like Bernie Madoff or something, it's just broken at that point. So you want to be good. How do I define character? Well, it's how you act when no one's looking, right? Your grandma taught you that. It's let me add something to that. It's how you treat people who can't do anything for you or to you. You go get food at a restaurant, someone refills your water glass. That's, how you respond to that by saying thank you and looking them in the eyes. It says something about your character, right? All right, so those 3 things you should chase. Now, if you're with me to this point, I'm about to tell you the most important thing you'll hear all year. I'm convinced you will hear nothing more important than this. So if you have a way to take notes, just take notes. You have to get your priorities straight. And what do I mean by that? Well, here's your homework. Okay, Tracy, I'm going to give a homework. She's muted. She can't say no. So I want you to take a piece of paper. I want you to draw a line right down the middle. Okay, you're going to draw a vertical line down the middle. On the left-hand side at the top, you're going to draw a heart. At the right-hand side of the top, you're going to draw a picture of you. Underneath that heart, you're going to have 10 blanks. In those 10 blanks, you're going to identify your priorities as your heart desires them, deep in your heart. What do you want? So in the way I think about that is, in a perfect world, if you could get up and do whatever you wanted, what would you do first? Okay, and then get down to 10. Now, when you get to 10, you get to stop. And don't do this now. Just listen and do this when you have some really thinking time. Okay, and then on the right-hand side, underneath that picture of you, you have 10 blanks, and you're going to write your priorities in there as you actually live your life. So left side is I want, right side is I do. Then you have similar words probably, hopefully, and you take your pen and you start connecting similar terms with a line. Just go across the page, and family goes to family, and school goes to school, and work goes to work, and you start connecting lines, right? And then you take the thing, and I want you to put it up on the fridge and look at it. And what you're looking for are horizontally parallel lines on your chart. That's what you want. If I saw your chart, I would assume you're a pretty happy person if that's what I saw. But if I saw your chart and I saw this, a bunch of this, it would tell me everything I needed to know. There's no way you can be happy because your heart isn't getting what it wants. I mean, there's just no way. And so then how do you fix it? Like, what's the problem, right? Well, this gets me in trouble, and I believe this with all my heart, and I have tenure and they can't fire me, so I'm going to say it anyway. I don't think your job or school should make the top 3. I don't think that's what those are for. I think those top 3 spots are for human beings. If you're a religious person, it's for that. And that's not just Corey saying that. I've stood on a stage literally in front of 1 million people. Over my 16 years, I've stood on a stage and 1 million people have basically told me this. And so let's call this the wisdom of crowds, okay? They do not want job in those top spaces. Those that put it there struggle. So no one has ever come up to me and said, "You're wrong, Corey. I find that to be so wrong. I work 80 hours a week and I'm so happy. My kids don't know my name, but I want to work more." Like, nobody says that to me. They come up to me in tears and they say something like this: "Oh my gosh, Corey, I work 80 hours a week and I'm utterly miserable. I'm about to get a divorce. My kids don't even know me. I'm about to become a full-blown alcoholic. I can't sleep. I'm enraged. I'm depressed. Can you help me?" And the only answer I could think of to respond to that is, "Yeah, I can help you. You're not going to like it. You got to go home and fix your lines." And so then they'll say something to me like, "Well, okay, but then my stock options won't vest." I had someone say that to me. True. Someone said to me, "I'm a woman in this company and there's not a lot of women in the C-suite. And if I do what you say, I've got 2 young kids. I want to be with my kids, but if I do what you say, I won't get this promotion." And she looked at me. She's like, "What should I do?" And I said, "You answered your own question." She goes, "I want to be a mom." And she never quit. But she spent more time with her kids and she never got that promotion. But it's funny because I got an email from her a while back and she said, "Thank you so much. It's the happiest I've ever been." And then I was at a speech once. This was back in the Clinton-Trump election. And someone said, "Take someone like Hillary Clinton. How would her list look?" This is why I hate the Q&A. Tracy's making me do a Q&A, but these are hard questions, right? And the only answer I could think to say was, does Hillary Clinton look all that happy to you? I mean, if we're just being honest, take any politician at that level, man or woman. Do they seem all that happy to you? Like, I never turn on the TV and say, "Wow, there's a U.S. senator on TV, looks really happy today." They look miserable. You ever turn on CNBC and say, "Wow, the CEO of that big company looks super happy today"? They don't look all that happy, right? If Hillary Clinton was sitting right in front of me, I'd say, "Please do this homework assignment." And if her lines came out horizontally parallel, then great, but I don't think that they would, and I certainly don't see that on her face. And I desperately want to see on your face that your heart and your life align. Your heart and your life align. My wife is a trauma surgeon. She sees people, die. No one has ever said to my wife on their deathbed, "I'm dying, doctor, but I just wish I would have had a little more money." Doctor, I'm dying. I wish I would have been a little better looking. Like, they never say any of that to her. They look at her and they say, Doctor, I'm dying, and I wish I would have been a better person. I wish I would have been a better mom, a better dad, a better son, a better daughter. I mean, I hope this hits home to some of you. The only time work ever comes up is when they say, I wish I would have been nicer to the people I worked with, right? So she kept coming home. She said, Corey, you've got to talk about this in your speeches. I mean, this is what people say to me. And the only way I can think about talking about this is a concept from law, which is hearsay. So if you've seen Law and Order, you've heard of hearsay. It's if I hear you say something, I can't go into court and testify that you said it because I didn't say it. I got to find you. I got to put you under oath. And you tell the judge what you said. The problem is you can't always find witnesses, right? They disappear, they die. I mean, whatever. You got to have trials still. So they have exceptions to the hearsay rule, but they don't want to have very many because reliable testimony is so important. But one of them is called a dying declaration, which means if I hear you say something and you're in the process of dying, I can go to court and I can testify about that, even though I didn't say it. Why? Because they've done study after study after study that shows what someone says when she's dying is true. People on their deathbeds, they don't lie. And I could think of dozens of reasons why they wouldn't lie, but it doesn't matter. So until people start telling my wife on their deathbeds that they wish they would have been richer, had better grades, put their work first, had more money, until they start telling her that y'all, I'm right. And you're welcome. And I don't know how else to say that, man. It may be frustrating to you, but please go home and fix your lines. Now you're probably saying to me, well, Corey, if I do what you say, it's going to cost me. And my response to you is, that's right. I mean, I think it will. I think it'll cost you. And here's the thing. I would never ask you to do something that I wouldn't do myself. So let me tell you my list, okay? I'm a religious guy. I love my wife. I've got 2 little kids. So there's 3. Tell me where my job goes. I mean, if we're just being honest, tell me where my job goes. And so what they would do at my law firm is they would say, well, we'll be cool about it. We don't care which of those 3 things goes. You pick. As if that's cool, right? You pick. So what I saw these young lawyers do is the first thing to go was their marriage. And if you were to look at divorce rates among professionals like that, they're really high, doctors, lawyers, engineers. The first thing to go is their marriage when their job puts that pressure on them. The second thing to go was their faith. And the last thing to go was their relationship with their kids, which says something, doesn't it, about the power of a parent? But pretty soon all those things were gone. And I'm not going to do that in my life, so my job has to come forth. Well, guess what? My boss doesn't always like that. And it would be impossible for me to quantify for you how much that has cost me in my career. It's cost me jobs. It's cost me promotions. It's cost me money. It's cost me raises. There was this one year I was nominated for a Teacher of the Year award, and I was the only one nominated. They sent that out. And so I go to the awards ceremony, and they get to that, and they say, no award given. I couldn't even beat myself for this award. But it wasn't me. They hated me because 5, 6 o'clock at night, I go home and have dinner with my family. I'm the coach of my daughter's soccer team. We're the kicking kangaroos. We're actually really good. I'm sure it has nothing to do with the coaching, but if I have a meeting at the same time as a soccer practice, I'm going to the soccer practice. Because of that, I'll never teach at Harvard. And I may never be the professor of the year. There's a lot of things I'm not going to get in my career, but you know what I am? I'm the happiest married man, the whole university. And I'm the best dad at the whole university, and I'd bet my life on it. So write this down, okay? Especially young people. In life, you choose. You have to choose. And I'm not telling you not to choose your job. I'm telling you to put it forth, which is still really high on the list that only goes to 10. I spend way more time working than I do having dinner with my kids. But if you look up the word priorities in the dictionary, all it means is where do you spend your best energy? That's all that it means. And they get my best energy, and my work gets my 4th best energy, and then I just go on with left. I'm a horrible golfer. I'm a horrible woodworker. These are things I like, and I suck at it, and I don't have time. And maybe when I get older, I will, but I don't have time to do a million things. I don't want my painting to be so full that my life is barren. So let me conclude with this, and then I'm happy to take some questions. A couple of things. So the topic of this conference is the competitive advantage of ethics, and I fully agree with that. And Erica, you're going to love Erica. She's wonderful, and she's going to go into that in depth, and I fully agree with that. The more ethical you can be in business, the better you'll be. But I just want to add a caveat to that. Let's say that sometimes in your business career, you're ethical and it doesn't work to your advantage. That can't be the reason why you're good, because sometimes it won't. You have to be good because it's the right thing to do. Right? You're a good person because being a good person is the right thing to do. And it will also help you in business, but that cannot be the reason why you do it. Because there will be times in your life when that won't be true. You have to believe it. All right, so I want you to go and Google this poem by Ralph Waldo Emerson called Success. And it's just beautiful. Anyway, there's a line in there about a legacy, and I think it's always kind of fun to end a speech on legacy type topics. Well, he says, you make a difference by a healthy child, a garden patch, or a redeemed social condition. And when I figured out what those words meant, it literally changed my life. So I kept saying to myself, Corey, you don't have to go cure cancer anymore. You just have to be a good dad. Yeah, healthy child. Wait a second. I don't have to go cure cancer. I just need to plug into my garden patch, which is my community. Every one of you on this call has a garden patch. But, my mom has cancer, and you probably know someone who has cancer. We need someone to go cure cancer, which would be a redeemed social condition, right? But let me read the sentence again, okay? It's healthy child, comma, garden patch, comma, or a redeemed social condition. When you have a sentence with a bunch of commas and the word or, that makes those three things equal. Ask your first grade teacher. It's equal. How about this? Let's pick one. I'm a little tired of students telling me they want to change the world. How about you change something on your campus first? How about you change something in your little garden patch first? Let's make your residence hall floor a little better, right? There's a lot of things we can do now before we go change the world. Let's get some momentum before we run into that wall, okay? So what is your garden patch right now? For me, it's this Daniels Fund stuff that I do. It's my university, it's my family, it's my neighborhood, right? And we can change the world later. And hopefully that's part of your legacy, right? But on no one's tombstone does it say, here lies John Doe, he was rich. Here lies Jane Doe, she was famous. It doesn't say that. It never says, here lies John Doe, lawyer. I've never once seen that on a tombstone. You know what it says? Here lies John Doe, loving father. Here lies Jane Doe, loving mother. Here lies Bill Daniels, philanthropist. That's what it says. Okay, so with that, I'm happy to take some questions. I can read them, but just type them into the chat. I'll read some of them. I know some of you have been asking them. Let me just read some of these first. How do you handle individuals who have no ethics? I have high standards, and I constantly run into people that seem to have no value. So this is a difficult question. In certain instances, you walk away, especially when it comes to friendships and close relationships. And when it comes to maybe a place where you work, if it's that bad, you walk away. It's hard to change the tone from the bottom up. However, sometimes in your life, you're going to have to be around people like that because you can't just walk away and escape it. So if your moral compass is strong, you'll be able to resist it. But it's like Aristotle said, you're the sum total of the people you hang around, right? When you hang around liars and cheaters, you'll lie and cheat. So I want you to be really careful with that. Okay, next one. How can we as young professionals, and by the way, I haven't read these, so I'm reading them on the fly. I hope they're good. How can we as young professionals handle being employed by an unethical company when our financial situation doesn't allow leaving? So go back to the very beginning of my speech. Make your financial situation allow leaving. Right? I have no other answer to that question. Live within your means so that you can leave, okay? So always live within your means. Okay, I've noticed you're an ethics bootcamp creator. Any advice for faculty and professionals interested in developing ethics-oriented bootcamps? Email me. And Tracy, I'm sure will have my email. But let me just give you some more serious advice. Find a group of student leaders who care about this and help them guide the curriculum. Right? Find a bunch of students who are really plugged into ethics and then find out what they want to learn about and start there. And then what we do at ours is we bring in a bunch of professionals who are really good speakers. So it's not necessarily a CEO because sometimes they're not very good speakers. Some successful business person who's a good speaker. We bring in a comedian because to laugh is part of being ethical, right? Not take yourself too seriously. And then we do a service project. So we have compelling speakers based on subjects my students want to hear about. We have a comedian and a service project. We build bears for Children's Hospital. So hope that helps. Okay. Certain individuals have many expectations since they were children. However, before we realized that we had already lost time for a childhood, how can we balance that in our older age with work and life to be happy? Yeah, I love that question. I don't care how old you are. That's such a good question. Line your lines up and put your work lower. Which means in my life, I could never be a corporate lawyer because it wouldn't allow that to be fourth on my list. There are certain jobs that I'm not going to be allowed to have, but man, I wake up every day happy now and when I didn't used to. So I'm going to leave that up to you, okay, as to what to chase. At what point in your life were you able to really reflect and apply your 3 points? I have probably 10 years ago. When I was 35, right? You know, they talk about imposter syndrome. I was a professor when I was 27, and I actually was an imposter. I don't think I knew anything about it. So if you're feeling right now like this is overwhelming, just get on your starting line. And you ever see a track and field race and they don't just run, they go to their mark and they say, on your mark, get set, go, right? Find your mark first. Pick up something I said today that resonates with you and do that first, and then get set, and then take something else. This shouldn't all just be right now. But what I always tell people is you don't have to agree with me. All I ask is you critically think about your life, and I bet we come to a lot of the same conclusions. A few more. In such an interconnected world, how do you balance the subjective view of ethics and how it differs among hundreds of cultures? No, this is right. This is a really good question. So there's a concept in ethics called moral relativism, which is a little bit different than what this question is asking. But moral relativism is when you say, I'll decide for me what's right and wrong. And you would think that would sound very freeing, wouldn't it? But that's not. People who live by that coda aren't all that happy. People need guiding principles, which is why I think these Daniels Fund principles are so good. Or, Bill Daniels talks about an ingrained code of ethics. You have to have something. But now let's talk about the differing cultures worldwide where something would be gray. And that's my point. When the world is gray, what you need are frameworks to analyze it, right? So utilitarianism would be one. Greatest good for greatest number of people. Virtue ethics would be one. You look at the different virtues. Is this fair? Is this, transparent? Look at the principles here, right? Is this courageous? So you could analyze other cultures' viewpoints under that lens. You could look at Kant and deontology and say, am I using someone solely as a means to an end? And so that's the beauty of this world in a way, right? There will be gray. So you need frameworks to cope with that. So I hope that answers that question. Okay. I heard you say you can damage your conscience to the point where it breaks. What advice do you have for people who are trying to recover from a broken conscience and a life of moral injuries? Wow, what a great question. I think it's really hard to break it irreparably. So I think you can. And we talk about Bernie Madoff, and you see people like all these shooters, you see, it's broken. But I think for people like us, it's breaking and it's fixed with habitual good. Well, so what I mean is more patience, more kindness, more loyalty, more honesty, right? You fix it habitually. And that's sort of what Aristotle would talk about is your habitual actions define who you are. So I would try that. I would just pick a bunch of virtues and try to live more by those. And so for me, I'm not a very patient person. So I want to work on that. For you, it might be something else, but you got to find out what that is and you got to work on it. Okay. How could employers help employees live an authentic life with integrity? Maybe we'll stop at this one. This is such an awesome question. I think employers, if you're listening, you have a moral responsibility to treat your employees with respect and not just as a means to it. I think you have a moral responsibility. I think morale is critical. So here's the sort of creed I use when I supervise people. Be a leader that you would follow, right? What does that mean? It means, would you even follow yourself? Like if you were in charge of your own self, would you follow it? And some of you were like, no, I don't even like myself, right? You want to be a leader that other people would follow. And that means you're consistent and you have principles and you care. Listen, you can absolutely care about what's going on in your employees' lives. Don't play the legal card with me. Well, it's illegal for me to care about my employees' marriages. And that's not true. It's illegal for you to fire someone because they're religious or not hire someone because they're a woman. That's illegal. It's not illegal to care about how they're doing. I want you to plug deeply into their lives. And if someone's struggling, help them. Let them go home and fix their marriage. Like plug in deeply to that. Most workplaces don't have to be miserable. It doesn't have to be miserable. I mean, I have a speaking career because most are, right? I mean, morale is low, and so thank you. It's why I have a speaking career, but it doesn't have to be. But it's got to be at the top. So if you're a boss right now on this call and you have a lot of power, you can change it tomorrow just by the way you look at your principles and your character and your integrity. Yeah, please give my email out. It's just my name. I would love it. But this is wonderful. Tracy, thank you so much. And I'm going to go teach that con law class and see how it goes.
Thank you so much, Corey, for your insights on how to live an ethical life of integrity. We will now take a short break and lead into small group discussions that include business leaders, educators, and students to talk about what you learned from this keynote and also how ethics has been important to you. I was watching the chat while Corey was speaking, and there were a lot of comments about your own life choices and how you've been thinking about what's important to you. If you were assigned a small group, you should see a Thursday small group discussion session on your agenda page. You may join the session as soon as it's live. It's usually 5 minutes before the start of the session, and it will go into a Zoom meeting. Please make sure you join your session, your small group, because it's a great experience. When you get into the Zoom meeting, use the chat function to introduce yourself, because there's going to be a lot of different people in the small group. After the small groups, join us for a business panel at 10 minutes after 3. So enjoy your small group discussions. Thank you, Corey.